Galaxy, there existed one region that every civilization agreed to avoid. Not because of treaties, not because of fear-based myths, but because of experience. Human space. Every fleet that entered it vanished. No wreckage, no distress call, no survivors. Until one commander decided to prove the galaxy wrong. If stories of quiet, terrifying humanity fascinate you, subscribe now. This is the kind of story that stays with you long after it ends. Commander Ralvik had never believed in forbidden places. He believed in data, probability, and outcomes. As Supreme Fleet Commander of the Threxian Dominion, he had spent his entire life proving that uncertainty was just ignorance waiting to be solved. Standing on the bridge of the flagship Ascendant Claw, he stared at the edge of human space as if it were a puzzle daring him to solve it. There was nothing there. No glowing barrier. No weapons platforms. No fleets waiting in ambush. The boundary existed only as a thin red line on the navigation display and a heavier weight in the minds of every officer around him. Space beyond the line appeared calm, open, and almost inviting. Ralvik broke the silence. Advance. The fleet moved forward as one. 46 warships, each carrying centuries of technological refinement, crossed into human space without resistance. No alarms sounded. No strange energy spikes appeared. Sensors reported normal readings across every spectrum. If this place was so dangerous, Ralvik thought, it was doing an excellent job of hiding it. Hours passed. Then a full standard day. The fleet continued deeper, encountering star systems untouched by war or exploitation. Planets shimmered with oceans and thick atmospheres. Artificial satellites still orbited some of them, transmitting nothing, but clearly functional. This was not dead space. This was abandoned space. The first unease crept in when long-range scanners detected derelict ships drifting between systems. Not Threxian ships. Not human ships. Dozens of different alien designs, some ancient, some advanced, all silent. No impact damage. No weapons scars. Just empty vessels, frozen in time. Ralvik ordered a boarding team dispatched to one of the nearest wrecks. The team returned hours later, visibly shaken. Their report was short and disturbing. The ship was intact. Life support had failed only after the crew disappeared. Personal belongings remained neatly stored. Food supplies untouched. Command logs ended mid-sentence. There were no signs of violence. It was as if the crew had simply ceased to exist. Ralvik ordered the fleet to continue. The second day inside human space brought the first malfunction. A minor one. A navigation recalculation error that should have resolved instantly. Engineers corrected it manually, but an hour later, another appeared. Then another. Each error pointed the fleet slightly off course, nudging it deeper inward rather than allowing lateral movement. When Ralvik ordered a course correction toward the exit, the navigation system complied. Engines engaged. Space folded. And when the fleet emerged, they were farther inside human space than before. Confusion spread through the bridge. Run diagnostics, Ralvik commanded. Everything came back clean. The systems were not broken. They were functioning perfectly. That was when the first human message appeared. It did not come through standard communication channels. It simply appeared across every display simultaneously. Plain text. No encryption. No signature. You were lost. The bridge fell silent. Ralvik stepped forward. Identify sender. There was no answer. Then a second line appeared. That is the first lesson. Before anyone could respond, the message vanished. Moments later, sensors detected a ship approaching. It emerged without warning, as if it had always been there. A human vessel, small by military standards, its hull marked with age rather than battle. No active weapons systems. No defensive posture. It drifted calmly alongside the Ascendant Claw. A communication channel opened. You crossed the line, a human voice said. Calm. Neutral. Neither hostile nor welcoming. Ralvik replied, identifying himself and his fleet. He stated their intent clearly. Observation only. No aggression. The human paused before responding. Intent is irrelevant after entry, the voice said. You already chose. Ralvik demanded clarification. The human ship did not answer. Instead, it slowly accelerated away, vanishing without a jump signature, leaving behind only empty space. Fear began to creep through the fleet. Ralvik suppressed it with discipline and authority. He ordered a full retreat attempt. All ships aligned. Engines charged. The fleet executed a synchronized jump. They emerged inside a star system no map recognized. That was when time began to fracture. Chronometers disagreed across ships. Biological monitoring showed inconsistencies in aging rates among crew members. Some experienced exhaustion after hours. Others felt as if days had passed. Medical scans showed no illness, no radiation damage, no anomaly that could be treated or corrected. Space itself was wrong. As days stretched into weeks, resources began to strain. Ships attempted independent course plotting. Every attempt led to deeper isolation. Some vessels vanished during jumps. Not destroyed, simply gone. The fleet began to fracture psychologically. Crews argued. Officers questioned orders. Confidence turned to doubt. Ralvik remained focused. He studied patterns. Every disappearance followed conflict. Every loss followed fear-driven decision-making. Then came the second message. You are being evaluated. This time, it included a location. Ralvik ordered the fleet toward it. They arrived at a planet covered in forests and oceans, its surface dotted with massive human cities, all empty. Power grids still functioned. Climate systems maintained balance. Transportation networks stood ready for use. Humans had not fled. They had stepped away. Ralvik accessed planetary archives. The data was overwhelming. Human history unfolded before him. Wars, expansion, near extinction, and then a turning point. Humans had realized something no other species had accepted. Violence was not strength. Control was not dominance. The greatest threat to civilization was not the enemy, but the need to conquer one. Human space was not a fortress. It was a test. The realization struck Ralvik with crushing clarity. Every fleet that entered failed because they could not stop trying to win. As this understanding settled, the human ship returned, hovering above the planet's atmosphere. You are closer than most, the voice said. Ralvik asked the question that mattered. Is there a way out? Yes, the human replied. But not as you are now. And then the message ended. Ralvik looked out at his fleet. 46 ships reduced to 31. Crews exhausted. Morale broken. He understood the choice before him. And for the first time in his life, logic alone was not enough. The real test was just beginning. Ralvik did not sleep. Sleep had become unreliable anyway. Time inside human space flowed like water poured onto uneven ground, pooling in some places and racing through others. On the bridge of the Ascendant Claw, he watched officers cycle through exhaustion and forced alertness, their faces tight with fear they no longer tried to hide. The fleet was no longer unified. 31 ships remained, but they felt like fragments drifting without gravity. Communication delays grew longer. Command acknowledgements came slower. Questions replaced obedience. The first open defiance came from Captain Virax of the Iron Wake. His voice cut across the command channel without authorization. He accused Ralvik of leading them into a controlled death spiral. He demanded independent command authority so his ship could attempt escape on its own terms. Ralvik denied the request. Within minutes, 3 ships aligned with the Iron Wake. They broke formation and jumped without fleet synchronization. They never reappeared. The rest of the fleet watched the sensor logs in silence. There was no explosion, no energy spike, just disappearance, like breath leaving a body. That was when the third message arrived. Division accelerates failure. The words appeared everywhere, even on personal displays. Even in private quarters. Some crew members reported hearing the message spoken in their own language, in voices that sounded uncomfortably familiar. Fear became something heavier. It was no longer fear of death. It was fear of being understood. Ralvik ordered all ships to open internal channels. No encryption. No command filters. Every crew member could hear every other. Confessions spilled out. Accusations. Regrets. Long-buried doubts surfaced like wounds reopened. Discipline shattered. And yet, something unexpected happened. As weapons were powered down to prevent internal conflict, ship systems stabilized. Navigation errors slowed. Time distortions lessened. It was subtle, but measurable. Ralvik noticed. Human space was responding. The fourth message arrived as confirmation. You are reducing resistance. Ralvik gathered his remaining captains in a shared virtual chamber. He spoke without authority, without command tone. He told them what he had learned from the archives. He told them human space was not punishing them for entering. It was revealing them. Some captains listened. Others accused him of surrendering to manipulation. 1. Captain Saris smiled coldly and asked the question no one wanted to answer. What if the test is obedience? That night, Saris acted. Her ship rerouted power back to its weapons. She targeted another Threxian vessel, claiming it was infected by human influence. The shot never fired. The moment weapons charged, Saris's ship froze. Not disabled. Paused. Time locked it in place like an insect trapped in amber. The rest of the fleet could see it, could scan it, but could not interact with it. Then it vanished. No warning. No explosion. The message followed. Aggression disqualifies. Silence returned, heavier than before. Ralvik understood then that human space was not watching fleets. It was watching choices. Days later, the human ship returned again. This time, it invited Ralvik aboard. The interior was simple. No guards. No restraints. Just a single human, older, eyes sharp with quiet patience. She introduced herself as Mara. She told Ralvik the truth. Human space was not automated. Not fully. Humans still watched. Still judged. Still decided. But they rarely intervened. The system worked because most civilizations destroyed themselves before intervention was necessary. Ralvik asked the question burning in him. Why let anyone leave? Mara answered without hesitation. Because fear spreads faster than hope. Survivors carry fear back with them. That keeps the rest out. Ralvik realized the final cruelty of human space. It did not need to kill invaders. It needed witnesses. When Ralvik returned to his ship, he issued the most dangerous order of his life. All ranks dissolved. All resources shared. All decisions made collectively. Some protested. But human space responded. Navigation stabilized. The exit appeared. Not as a gate. Not as a portal. Just a direction that finally made sense. The fleet aligned. As they prepared to leave, Mara sent one final message. Tell them the truth. Ralvik did not ask which truth. He already knew. The fleet jumped. And for the first time in galactic history, ships returned from human space. But they did not return victorious. They returned changed. And the galaxy was not ready for what they would say. The return of the fleet sent shockwaves through the Threxian dominion. No alarms announced their arrival. No victory signals preceded them. They emerged quietly at the edge of known space, their hulls intact, their crews alive, and their transmissions restrained to the point of near silence. Commander Ralvik ordered a media blackout before the first civilian vessel could detect them. He knew instinctively that the truth, if released uncontrolled, would fracture the Dominion faster than any enemy fleet ever could. The Senate demanded answers immediately. They convened an emergency session within hours, projecting their presence into the command chamber aboard the Ascendant Claw. Faces filled the air, some furious, some relieved, some calculating. Ralvik stood alone at the center of the chamber, stripped of formal command symbols by his own choice. He spoke plainly, without embellishment, without drama. He told them everything. The abandoned worlds. The navigation failures. The messages. The test. The human named Mara. The reaction was not what he expected. Fear came first, but it did not last. Fear quickly transformed into ambition. If human space could trap fleets without firing a shot, then it could be studied. If it could evaluate intent, then it could be exploited. Senators began arguing not about avoiding human space, but about controlling it. Weaponizing it. Turning humanity's restraint into a dominion advantage. Ralvik warned them. He told them human space was not a machine to be reverse-engineered. It was a system built on understanding behavior, not physics. It punished the desire to dominate. It collapsed under aggression. But his words fell into familiar patterns of dismissal. You survived, one senator said. That means it failed. Ralvik realized then that the Dominion had already failed the test. Within days, the Senate authorized Project Mirror. A covert operation to send unmanned probes and psychological test fleets into human space, stripped of weapons but guided by simulation algorithms designed to mimic restraint while secretly gathering data. They believed they could lie to the system. Trick it. Outsmart it. The probes vanished. The first test fleet vanished faster. The second did not. Instead, it returned with a single transmission that shattered every assumption the Dominion held. We know what you are doing. The message was human, clear, calm. Then something unprecedented happened. Human space moved. Star maps across the galaxy shifted. Trade routes rerouted themselves. Long stable jump corridors became unreliable. Regions once considered safe began showing the same navigational anomalies Ralvik had experienced. Human space was expanding, not physically, but conceptually. Its influence rippled outward, touching systems that had never come near it. Panic spread. Civilizations accused one another. Alliances fractured. Fleets mobilized without targets. The galaxy began to behave exactly as humans had predicted long ago. Ralvik was summoned again, this time not as a commander, but as a liability. The Senate blamed him for provoking humanity, for revealing their survival, for inspiring retaliation. Ralvik did not defend himself. Instead, he made a single request. Allow me to speak to them again. The Senate refused. That night, Ralvik disappeared. No security footage showed his exit. No alarms recorded intrusion. He simply ceased to exist within Dominion space. Hours later, a single human ship appeared near the border of human space, waiting. Mara welcomed him aboard. You came faster than expected, she said. Ralvik asked the question that haunted him. Is this punishment? Mara shook her head. This is correction. She revealed the truth that no archive had contained. Human space was not a location. It was a choice, embedded into the structure of human expansion. Humans had seeded decision-based systems throughout the galaxy long before most civilizations achieved faster than light travel. They did not wait to be threatened. They prepared to be misunderstood. Every system activated only when a civilization reached a certain level of power and instability. Humanity was not hiding. Humanity was watching. Ralvik understood the final irony. Humans had become guardians not through conquest, but through refusal. They had given the galaxy freedom, knowing most species would misuse it until forced to confront themselves. And now, the galaxy stood on the edge of that confrontation. Mara offered Ralvik a place among them. Not as a subject, not as an ally, as a witness, because the next phase was about to begin. And this time, the galaxy would not be allowed to fail quietly. He expected interrogation, observation, perhaps even slow erasure. What he did not expect was freedom. The human vessel carried no restraints, no visible hierarchy, no guards. It moved through space with a calm certainty that made Dominion warships feel crude by comparison. Mara did not escort him like a prisoner. She walked beside him like a colleague. They traveled deeper than any fleet ever had, not through force, but through permission. Navigation no longer resisted them. Time stabilized. Space unfolded naturally, as if it had been waiting for cooperation all along. Ralvik began to understand the most unsettling truth of all. Human space had never blocked escape. It had blocked intention. Mara showed him worlds still inhabited by humans. Not hidden cities or underground bunkers, but open civilizations living quietly, deliberately small. No megastructures. No vast fleets. No territorial claims. Humans had chosen limits, and in doing so, had gained something no other species possessed. Control without domination. Ralvik asked why they allowed other civilizations to collapse instead of intervening directly. Mara answered with a story. Long ago, humanity had tried to save others. They had shared technology, knowledge, even governance models. Every attempt ended the same way. Dependence, resentment, rebellion, collapse. Humanity learned that guidance imposed was just another form of control. So they changed the rules. Instead of telling civilizations how to behave, they built environments that reflected behavior back at them. Human space did not judge morality. It measured coherence, unity, restraint. A species that could not govern itself under pressure could not be trusted with unchecked power. Ralvik saw recordings of past fleets. Thousands of them, each one different, each one failing in its own way. Some through violence, some through fear, some through rigid obedience that crushed adaptability. The system did not punish mistakes. It punished refusal to learn. Then Mara showed him the next phase. Human space was no longer limited to humans. The galaxy was reaching a tipping point. Technology spread faster than wisdom. Expansion outpaced reflection. Humanity could no longer afford to remain silent observers. The system was evolving, not expanding borders, but expanding responsibility. Ralvik was not brought here by chance. He was chosen. Back in Dominion space, Project Mirror had escalated. The Senate, convinced humanity posed an existential threat, authorized the formation of a coalition strike force. Their plan was simple: overwhelm human space with numbers. Sacrifice fleets if necessary. Force humans to reveal their defenses. Force them to fight. They believed humans would not risk total annihilation. They were wrong. Mara showed Ralvik the projection. Hundreds of fleets converging. Weapons primed. Commanders united by fear and arrogance. The system began responding before the first ship crossed the border. Navigation collapsed across half the galaxy. Communication delays stretched into days. Trade systems failed. Civil unrest exploded everywhere. Humanity did not strike the fleets. They struck the assumptions beneath them. Ralvik realized the final twist before Mara spoke it aloud. Human space was never meant to protect humans. It was meant to protect the galaxy from civilizations that reached power before maturity. Humanity had already passed through its own test. Now it was administering one. Mara gave Ralvik a choice. Return to the Dominion as a warning. Or stay and help guide what came next. Ralvik looked out at the quiet stars, at a species that had chosen patience over pride, restraint over empire. He understood now why no ship returned. Because returning meant carrying a truth most civilizations were not ready to hear. He accepted. And somewhere across the galaxy, the first coalition fleet crossed the line. The test began again. Human space with absolute confidence. It consisted of ships from 7 major civilizations, each one believing its presence made the group stronger, safer, and immune to whatever fate had claimed previous fleets. Their commanders shared authority through a joint council, a structure meant to prevent internal conflict. They believed unity was enough. They were wrong. From the moment the first ship crossed the boundary, human space responded. Not with force, not with resistance, with silence. Sensors remained clear. Weapons stayed cold. The fleet advanced in perfect formation, congratulating itself on its restraint. For several hours, nothing happened. Then the first disagreement arose. A minor one. A question of course alignment. One commander suggested adjusting trajectory to avoid a dense star cluster. Another accused him of fear-driven hesitation. The debate was logged, categorized as routine, and dismissed. Human space logged it too. Navigation systems began producing slightly different results for each ship. Not enough to cause alarm. Just enough to require constant discussion. Consensus slowed. Command cycles lengthened. Fatigue crept in. The second disagreement followed. Resource prioritization. One civilization wanted to conserve fuel. Another argued for speed. Voices sharpened. Trust thinned. Time distortion began. Some ships experienced hours passing while others recorded days. Crew members argued over whose data was correct. Biological rhythms drifted. Medical officers struggled to explain inconsistencies that defied physics. Back aboard the human vessel, Ralvik watched it all unfold in real time. Humanity was not interfering. They were observing. Mara explained what Ralvik was witnessing. Human space did not test strength. It tested alignment. The coalition believed unity meant agreement. Humans knew unity meant shared purpose under pressure. The difference was everything. Within a week, the coalition fleet fractured into subgroups. Not through violence, but through withdrawal. Ships began isolating their command systems to preserve autonomy. Communication channels narrowed. Transparency vanished. Human space responded immediately. Those ships found themselves unable to track one another. Long-range sensors blurred. Transponder signals echoed falsely. The fleet was still together, but perception told them they were alone. Panic followed isolation. One commander ordered a weapons test, claiming it was defensive. The weapons never fired. The ship simply stopped responding. Frozen in place, locked in time, it remained visible for hours before fading from existence. The message appeared across the coalition fleet. Aggression is not the failure. Justification is. That message broke them. Commanders argued openly. Accusations of sabotage flew. Old rivalries resurfaced. Historical grievances poisoned every discussion. The fleet no longer behaved as a collective. It behaved as individuals pretending to cooperate. One by one, ships vanished. Not destroyed. Not captured. Removed. Ralvik felt a deep, aching weight settle in his chest. This was not punishment. This was inevitability. Humanity had not doomed these fleets. They had merely built a mirror too honest to ignore. Mara turned to him. This is why we do not fight, she said. Fighting creates enemies. Reflection creates endings. Ralvik asked if any of them would survive. Some will, Mara answered. Enough to carry the warning. As if summoned by her words, a small cluster of ships stabilized. Their internal communications were open. Their weapons powered down completely. Their crews shared resources without command. They stopped trying to leave. Human space responded. Navigation aligned. Time normalized. A path appeared. Those ships followed it out. The coalition fleet was gone. Across the galaxy, the consequences were immediate. Civilizations that had sent ships into the coalition lost leadership overnight. Power vacuums formed. Economies stalled. Borders dissolved. Panic threatened to collapse everything humanity had tried to preserve. This was the moment Ralvik feared most. Because humanity would now be blamed. Mara did not deny it. They will hate us, she said. They already do. Ralvik asked the question that defined the future. What happens when they come back stronger? Mara smiled, not unkindly. They won't. Ralvik did not understand at first. Then he saw the data. The civilizations that lost fleets did not rebuild militarily. They turned inward. Their people demanded answers. Transparency. Accountability. Leaders who had gambled entire species on conquest were removed. Human space had not destroyed civilizations. It had removed their lies. Ralvik realized then that the galaxy was changing. Slowly. Painfully. But irreversibly. And humanity had positioned itself not as ruler, but as consequence. The final message to the surviving coalition ships was brief. You may return, but you will never be the same. Ralvik watched the last ship cross back into known space. For the first time, he felt hope. Because fear had failed, and understanding had begun, the galaxy's second age had started. And humanity was no longer silent. The galaxy did not collapse the way many had feared. It fractured instead, slowly and unevenly, like ice breaking under pressure but never fully giving way. News of the coalition fleet's disappearance spread despite every attempt at suppression. Survivors returned changed, quieter, stripped of certainty. They spoke carefully, choosing words as if language itself had become dangerous. Their silence frightened others more than any warning ever could. Governments demanded explanations. Militaries demanded revenge. Civil populations demanded truth. For the first time in recorded history, entire civilizations questioned the idea of expansion itself. The question was no longer how far can we go, but why are we going at all? Ralvik became a voice many did not expect. Not a prophet. Not a human representative. A reminder. He spoke to councils and assemblies through open channels, refusing secrecy. He told them that human space did not punish power. It punished imbalance. He told them no weapon could defeat it, because it was not an enemy. It was a response. Some listened. Others prepared for war anyway. A fringe alliance formed among younger, more aggressive species. They rejected restraint as weakness and reflection as manipulation. They believed humanity had crossed a line by shaping galactic outcomes without consent. They named themselves the Liberation Accord and began gathering fleets far beyond the edges of human space, convinced that distance and scale would protect them. Humanity noticed, but did nothing. This restraint enraged the Accord more than resistance ever could. They expected ultimatums, threats, demonstrations of force. Instead, they were ignored. Human silence became their justification. They claimed humanity feared them. The Accord launched its invasion without warning. Thousands of ships crossed the threshold simultaneously, flooding human space with sheer mass. They disabled internal communications to prevent dissent. Command authority was centralized. Emotional variance suppressed through chemical regulation. This fleet would not fracture. This fleet would not hesitate. For a moment, it seemed they were right. Human space did not react immediately. They advanced kilometers at a time, unchallenged. Confidence surged. The Accord declared victory before the first week ended. Then the system adapted. Navigation did not fail. Communication did not collapse. Instead, choice disappeared. Every ship received identical data. Identical instructions. Identical outcomes. The fleet moved as one, thought as one, reacted as one. At first, commanders celebrated this efficiency. Then they noticed something horrifying. They were no longer deciding anything. Human space had not rejected unity. It had revealed the cost of false unity. Crew members reported a loss of internal dialogue. Creativity vanished. Initiative dissolved. When unexpected variables arose, ships froze, waiting for non-existent orders. Perfect obedience became total paralysis. Ralvik watched from a human observatory station as the Accord fleet slowed to a crawl. Mara stood beside him. They removed conflict, she said. Conflict is where learning happens. The Accord attempted to retreat. The system allowed it. But the fleet could not agree on what retreat meant. Some ships tried to turn back. Others continued forward. Their centralized command structure collapsed under contradictory data. When hierarchy failed, there was nothing beneath it. Ships began drifting. Not disappearing. Drifting. Alive, intact, and completely lost. The message appeared across the Accord fleet. Freedom is not disorder. It is responsibility. That was the moment resistance ended. Some ships powered down entirely, allowing individual crews to regain autonomy. Others remained locked in command. Paralysis. Those ships stayed behind, monuments to control without conscience. The crews that reclaimed choice were guided out. The rest remained. Human space did not destroy them. It preserved them. As warnings. In the aftermath, something remarkable happened. Civilizations across the galaxy requested dialogue. Not with humanity alone, but with one another. New accords formed, not based on territory or dominance, but on limits. Expansion slowed. Borders stabilized. Conflict did not vanish, but it transformed. Humanity finally spoke publicly. Not as rulers. As equals who had made mistakes first. Ralvik stood beside Mara during the broadcast. He was no longer Threxian commander or human witness. He was something new. A bridge. Human space was not closing. It was opening. But only to those willing to walk through without weapons in their hands or certainty in their hearts. The galaxy had entered its most dangerous era. Not because of war, but because growth now required honesty. And honesty had always been the rarest resource of all. The galaxy did not celebrate its survival. There were no victory broadcasts, no monuments raised, no songs written. What followed was quieter and far more unsettling. Civilizations had been forced to look at themselves without the comfort of enemies to blame. For many, that was unbearable. Old empires began to fracture under the weight of truth. Populations questioned why fleets had been built larger than worlds needed. Why expansion had been treated as destiny rather than addiction. Leaders who had once spoken in absolutes now spoke in circles, careful not to trigger the same patterns that had erased entire armadas. Ralvik traveled constantly. He was invited and condemned in equal measure. To some, he was a survivor who brought wisdom back from the abyss. To others, he was a traitor who had sided with humanity and returned weakened. Assassination attempts followed him across systems. He survived not because of protection, but because many hands quietly chose not to strike. Humanity remained present but distant. They did not govern councils. They did not enforce treaties. They offered frameworks, not rules. Observers, not overseers. This frustrated those who still believed power only mattered if it could be seen. Then came the quiet rebellion. It did not begin with fleets. It began with information. A coalition of species released fragmented human archives taken from abandoned worlds. They framed humanity not as guardians, but as manipulators who had engineered galactic suffering to elevate themselves morally above others. The narrative spread fast. Faster than facts ever could. Humanity did not respond. That silence allowed the lie to grow. Protests erupted near human borders. Trade embargoes followed. Diplomatic channels closed. Humanity became isolated again, not by force but by resentment. Many civilizations preferred the comfort of a villain to the discomfort of responsibility. Ralvik warned Mara that this was dangerous. That misunderstanding could undo everything. Mara listened calmly. It has to happen, she said. Growth always resists its own cause. The turning point came from an unexpected place. A minor civilization, barely spacefaring by galactic standards, requested entry into human space. Not to expand, not to test it, to learn. They sent one ship. No weapons. No political objectives. Just observers and historians. The galaxy watched. The ship entered. It did not vanish. It returned within days. Its message was short. They showed us our future. If we stop chasing shadows. That message shattered the false narrative more effectively than any human defense ever could. Requests followed. Not fleets. Individuals. Scholars. Engineers. Philosophers. Humans did not open human space fully. They allowed passage selectively, carefully, painfully slow. Not everyone approved. The final crisis came when a civilization on the brink of collapse begged humanity to intervene militarily against a neighbor. Billions of lives were at risk. The pressure was immense. If humans refused, they would be seen as hypocrites. If they agreed, everything they had built would unravel. Ralvik watched Mara struggle for the first time. She admitted the truth quietly. There are no perfect choices. Only consequences we accept. Humanity chose restraint. They offered mediation, evacuation corridors, resource redistribution. They refused to fight. The war happened anyway. Millions died. The galaxy screamed at humanity. And yet, something unexpected followed. The civilizations involved emerged changed. Broken, but wiser. They did not rebuild fleets. They rebuilt safeguards. The pain was not erased, but it was not repeated. Ralvik understood then the final lesson human space was teaching. Suffering prevented is not the same as suffering understood. Humanity had chosen the harder path, not to save everyone, but to ensure the same mistakes could not dominate forever. As Ralvik aged, time finally claiming him now that he lived outside distortions, he recorded one last message. Not for humans. Not for the Threxian Dominion. For anyone who would listen. He spoke of silence that was not weakness. Of power that refused to rule. Of a species that learned too late, and then chose to wait so others might learn sooner. Human space remained, not as a border, as a question, and the galaxy was still learning how to answer it. The story was not over. It had only become honest.